Hi, I'm JayLeonardJ. I'm here with Eric Klein from Line 6. This is a big
Jay.
deal for you. You've been working your butt on this thing for a long time, haven't you?
No, not just me. A lot of people have been working their butts off, yeah.
We got the Stadium XL, kind of a first look, and they had that big little presentation earlier today, which went went really crazy. It was fantastic. Everyone's really excited about it. And I'm sure this is a long, how long have you been working on this thing for?
So it depends. So active development has been several years, but I think the first definition was back in 2017. So, because when Helix was first announced, immediately people started saying, well, I wanted to do this and this and this and this and this, and we're reading millions of posts over the years, and so it sort of gave us ammo on what we can pull off and what we might not be able to pull off, what might need to wait for the next platform, and we just cataloged everything. Like, all right, well, we want to do this. A lot of people know that Helix originally was supposed to have a touch screen, and we scrapped it in favor of the bigger screen and the capstan switches, but we kept all the old design stuff. So some of the features are actually from back then, and then some of the showcase stuff is like 25 years old.
So showcase has been something that's been in the process for a long time.
Not that we've actively been working on it, but a lot of the functionality was designed like a long time ago, and it was just a matter of just kind of putting all the pieces together and making sure that it was in a cohesive box and it made sense, and we're able to message it correctly, and now we just got to deliver it.
There's obviously a lot of really cool things that you've packed in, the Proxy and then the showcase. The Proxy, you didn't go too deep into the Proxy thing in the presentation.
By design, because Proxy won't be available until probably 2026.
Okay, so it won't be a launch feature.
It won't, unfortunately. But at the same time, like, give us this, give us that. It's like, oh well, it's coming. So, but we want to be as transparent as possible about when, what the timeline looks like. So.
How about the showcase feature? Will that be a launch?
Showcase is going to be growing over time as well. There will be hopefully Showcase at 1.0, some variation of it. And what's great is that we've already gotten a bunch of comments on, like, I want Showcase to do this, I want to do that. Like, okay, well. Yeah, we'll put it in the pile.
And I guess for everyone, the Proxy is their kind of your way of modeling cloning an amplifier,
amps,
and it uses, well, I guess it's supposed to use. There's a Wi-Fi in it, and it does the processing up in the cloud.
Yeah, these are the actual Wi-Fi antennas right here.
Oh, cool.
And so it communicates directly to our servers, and we'll do the number crunching. You keep making music. And when the capture's ready, it goes, hey, your capture's ready, and it shows up in the list.
How I guess, do you have an idea how long it actually takes for that kind of thing to happen, or?
Don't know yet.
Don't know. That's.
Well, we can't talk about it yet.
Oh, I see.
And it depends on a lot of things. It depends on the speed of somebody's Wi-Fi. If somebody has fast Wi-Fi, it should be really quick because cloud servers are ridiculously burly. They're certainly more powerful than any standalone multi-effects unit. So.
And because everything's happening in the cloud, there's learning happening. So the more, I guess the assumption would be the more profiles are being created around the world, the better it becomes. Was that kind of what I was getting?
Yeah, that can be part of it. But the other thing is that because the actual sort of proxy engine exists outside of this, certainly this can capture the data and it then collect the resultant clone. Because the actual technology is external from this particular box, we can improve the technology, we can add extra functionality, and it doesn't rely on the actual hardware itself, and it certainly doesn't rely on the actual firmware that's installed.
Right,
so you could have the same firmware, just like, I'm not going to update for a month or whatever, and then realize, oh wait, Proxy sounds better this week for whatever reason, right? So
very, very cool. And the Wi-Fi also will be doing your software updates, so you don't have to connect to a computer. You could leave that cable at home.
Yep. If there's a firmware update, a little red dot pops up there, and it's like, hey, there's a firmware update. You want it? Yes. And then it downloads and updates.
What else are we going to get with the Wi-Fi? Like, I could see in my head, I could see things like using the Wi-Fi or the Bluetooth for the app, to program it. And is there any other plans?
So Wi-Fi is the only way to communicate with the editor at first. So not even USB. So USB is coming a little bit later.
Really?
Yeah. Oh. So right now we do have a beta version of the editor, and it connects via Wi-Fi. Absolutely.
Would it be an app or would it be a browser-based editor?
No, it's standalone. It's standalone. Yeah.
And would it be something I'd be able to use on my phone? Would it be something or
that
a tablet?
We can't talk about, but somebody could certainly infer something like that.
Oh, really? and then the other thing we talked about, you mentioned, was the showcase thing, and that was the ability you could put your tracks in, it create its own stems, and that way you could
if you wanted,
remove guitar tracks, and that way you could mix your guitar sound in the context of a song, which is something when I do sounds that's kind of how I work. I connect it to my computer, and then I have some tracks that I like to work with, or the genre I'm working with, and build it that way. But you could do that all in box now.
Yeah, it just makes things a little bit more convenient. Like Moises has a fantastic stem splitting. Logic just improved their stem splitting. It sounds great. So you can split it there and load the files in separately as well if you'd like. But it just makes things easier because it's built in. We're using Yamaha's stem splitting, and that's all cloud-based as well. So when you drag a single file in, it goes, hey, do you want to split this stem? And if so, it sends it to the cloud, splits it, pulls it back in. Or if you have your own stems, especially if you're doing multi-track and you want to bring in your own stems from your recording or something like that, you can just drag them in, it just loads them in.
That's cool. And then you could also use it as a music director tool, have your backing tracks, and send it out to the people, and then you have your instrument. And I guess when looking at the presentation, you could even queue up different changes within the pedal. So when you get to a certain part of the song, it's going to automatically switch and get to different sounds. So you could just leave the pedal on the floor pretty much and just
So Showcase is really just a set of tools. So and there's not really a big learning curve to it. What it is all right. So I have my up to 8 stereo audio tracks. You can have 1, you can have 3, you can have 8, however you want. There's no editing, there's no trimming. You can fade in, fade out, things like that. But it's not a DAW. It's not meant to be a DAW. It's not a replacement for Ableton Live. But if you want segues between your songs or intros or cool outros, or you need to be able to trigger a backing vocal for this one part, or you're at the gig and your bass player doesn't show up, like unmute the bass part. I mean, they're just it's allows people to put on more engaging shows, to solve problems in their live performances. And if your songs are dynamic and you have a bunch of changes, instead of having to tap dance on stuff and having that anxiety of being able to, I have to hit the right thing at the right time, I may have to make sure my looper timing is dead on, you can just automate it. And it's just a matter of dragging events to a timeline and then choosing what you want that event to be, and you're done.
That's right. Yeah, cue your lights, cue your band.
And there's no I have to learn how to do lights. I mean, you kind of have to do that outside, like learn what the MIDI messages are for your DMX to converter, but dragging a MIDI flag and then choosing a CC is the exact same thing as choosing a looper flag or adding an amp switch flag.
It's very, very clever. It's very clever. And that's been something that's been worked on for, you mentioned earlier that you've been thinking, having that idea for the last 25 years.
Yeah, we didn't start on it until, fairly recently, a couple years ago. But yeah, I mean, the notion of trying to incentivize people to play out and venues are dying everywhere, and this is kind of heady and hippy-dippy or whatever, but I mean, there's an opportunity to, if you can put on a show that makes you go, wow, that's cool. Did you see the synced lights? Did you see the video there? Did you see, they were jumping around stage, having fun. They weren't and I listen to a ton of shoegaze, so instead of doing this all the time, or I gotta crank my delay feedback so I get that weird squeal. You can still do that manual if you want. It's all there, but now you don't have to.
It's very, very cool. So when I was watching it, actually for me, the thing that kind of excited me about it was actually some of the simple practical things about the unit, like the fact that it has a clock. And even when I unplug it and I plug it in.
This isn't on Wi-Fi because that's totally the wrong time.
Yeah, of course. But it will remember the time when I play. I can unplug it. I plug it. I guess there's a battery there that saves the presets and everything, and it uses the same battery for the clock. And then,
or if it remembers your Wi-Fi, it just goes and pings the server every time you turn it on.
And if I'm connected with Wi-Fi, it'll even change the time zone and stuff.
Yeah, you can choose your time zone from the global settings. Yeah.
And then, but for me, or
you can give me a stopwatch if you want instead.
That's crazy.
Start, stop.
And but my favorite feature actually is the search. So because there's so many Helix models and stuff, and what's the orange amp called? Mandarin? Is it Mandarin?
Yeah.
And then there's the male. What's male? The fact that I could just write Fender, or I could write orange, and it just shows me the amps, and there's even a graphical thing that is going to speed up the time of creating things drastically. And then the other option
it works with presets too. So if you have a ton of presets, you type in a certain amp brand, it pulls up all the presets with that amp block in it.
Yeah. And then with the like certain delays and stuff, there's always that weird knob that you forget what it means and what it is, and you could just press it and show. So there's all these little tiny UI things, and there's tiny little. Is there any other tiny little things you've done to improve the workflow outside of those three in this box that is really just going to speed up the creation process?
I mean, there are a ton of features in Helix that we just went in and we're like, okay, so how can we improve this? Are people using it to the extent we want them to? And if not, what can we do to make sure that they do? And favorites is a good one. So not enough people use favorites. It's super easy to use, but if we could give people infinite favorites or thousands of favorites in nested folders so they can organize them however they want, the notion of, oh, I want per model presets, that goes away because that's now in your favorites list. And you mentioned like something like focus view. So if you look at something like multipass, if on old Helix, it appears in a list. And it's just like a text list, like not unlike that, right? But simply by showing nice little pretty pictures, it's not earth-shattering. But now when you see something like this, and you see 5 different variations of that, at least it gives you pause, and it's like, wait a second, I've been skipping over all of these cool effects. It doesn't make any sense. Let me at least try it out. And there are 5 different variations, like, oh, I had no idea that effect could even do that. So by simply adding a mechanism to find what you're looking for and incentivizing people to just slow down and take a look at what we've already offered, borrow your friend's Helix Stadium and realize, oh man, there's all sorts of cool stuff in here. I'm going to go back to my HX Stomp because I have all that stuff too. I mean, the purpose is just like, hey, what are the cool 5 completely different cool sounds that this particular model can make? Because if you don't like a way a model sounds, you don't go to the next model necessarily. Well, let me spend at least 10 seconds finding something, oh wait, this is actually cool. I actually like this. And it just gives people a reason to spend a bit more time with that particular amp or effect. And if you're a power user, go and make your 5 favorite versions of that model, and then you can then morph between them. So instead of having this sound or this sound, you can have something that's 20% between.
And then you just kind of do micro tweak. You find that broad stroke, micro tweak after that.
And then if it's completely dialed in, save it as one of your 1,000 favorites.
And this is not just for the Agoura. This is for everything. Everything in the history of HX.
So the exception is stuff like parametric EQ doesn't have zones because it makes a lot more sense to do this. Cabs, there aren't zones, but we use focus view. So focus view isn't the zones. What it is it's a contextual tool that's at the model level.
And I noticed that the increments here are a lot more finer than you would see in the Helix too. I think you get you can go into quarters instead of 3 to 3.5 to 4. You get 0.75, and that just kind of it just makes you could get more sounds, and also just it gives you more variety to play with. It makes your tone just a little bit different than someone else's kind of sound, which is cool. It's just fantastic.
And some of it's sort of subconscious too. So I mean, if you just see that, you're like, okay, I might move that. Or you might not. It's like, I'm not going to bother with that. But if you see a mic and you start doing this and you can actually hear the difference, it's like, oh, that actually does sound better. And so it just sort of teaches you how to dial in tones easier.
Now, I guess the other thing that came out was the Agoura. Agoura. The way you're doing I guess it's a whole different way that you're modeling amplifiers and you're getting it in. How is that process, like when you're actually in there and you're modeling, and how is the process different than how it's been done traditionally with HX to this new generation?
So I'm not Ben or Sam or Ryan or Brandon or any of those, or Norm or any of those geniuses, but the way I understand it is historically Line 6 has at least approached amp modeling from a few different ways. But for the most part, it was like the more DSP, the more tools that you have to be able to describe the behavior of that circuit or that component. And as you add more DSP, you can get more granular. And it gets better and better and better all the way through HX. And as we improve those tools and add tools, the reason the newer amp models in Helix might sound better and more immediately gratifying than some of the older models is because we're constantly learning and constantly bettering ourselves. And we're also adding additional tools where we can describe weird behavior of amps that may not have existed back when we were doing other amps that might have been similar. So, but with Agoura, it's an entirely different approach to it, and I don't even entirely know how it is, but it's kind of nuts. I mean, the first time I heard Agoura, I was in my office, and somebody had lugged a JCM 800 up the stairs and were playing it down the hallway, and immediately you hear that crang. You're like, oh, why is somebody playing an amp down in the electrical engineering area, right? And I walk down the hall, and it's a computer, and it's running the first like beta version of the first Agoura amp. I'm like, holy crap, that is the amp. Are you kidding me? So, yeah, so I mean, modeling in general has a reputation of being sort of homogenized, where, you know, especially because it's a closed system. So whatever you plug into it, whatever you get out of it, it's still a closed system. But with something like Agoura, I mean, it's like the amp is in the room with you. It's really difficult to explain. Probably want to get Ben in here, but yeah.
I know you were showing like circuit schematics, and you were talking about, you know, trying to get the sound.
Those are from Ben.
Those are from Ben. Yeah,
that's where they sent me them. Yeah.
So when you're actually building it, like, how is this being turned? Like, are you working off schematics and the amp at the same time, and you're getting information from both, or like how does the modeling actually happen?
So they use mathematical models to describe not just the behavior of individual components, but the interaction between those components. And it requires a ton of DSP to pull that stuff off, because like Ripple goes completely mad in an AC30 when you set certain knobs certain ways. And sometimes that's not good. It's not something that people who own AC30s, they just kind of deal with. But sometimes that's the thing that makes it cut through a mix that they really like too. So we want to make sure that we respect that sound, and we can acknowledge that sound, but it allows you to dial it out as well, because in real world, it's like actually going in and adjusting those circuits in real time and manipulating in such a way that makes it more immediately gratifying.
Very, very cool. And then you also have the hype thing, which is kind of a cheat sheet to kind of fix the. You know,
it's not a magic bullet. We might have put too fine a point on it. It's what it's really meant to do is it could be very subtle depending on the amp. It could be pretty dramatic. You might hate it at 7. You might want to go down to 2. You might hate it on certain amps. It really depends on the amp and the amp settings. It might be really subtle if you have the tone stack set here, but really drastic if you have the tone stack set here. But what it does is it adds a lot of sort of behind the scenes parameters that attempt to try to shave off some of the offensive bits of the real amps to make it sound maybe a bit more like somebody might think that amp actually sounds but doesn't, if that makes sense.
And I guess the last question I have is, this is out here. It's Stadium. You could tell there's a Stadium XL. There's a smaller Stadium. I could see, you know, people are thinking, oh, that as Agoura continues on and grows, they could see this thing. What's in the future for OG Helix? Are some of the things that are being implemented here, like not the processing things, but maybe some of the little folder organization that, like is that going to find its way into Helix? How is what do you see as the happening? Because I know that you were there was some mention of there's still stuff coming out, there's still things coming out. While this is happening, what's going to happen to the legacy?
So we don't know. We've been so busy with this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so OG Helix, Helix Rack, and Helix LT have now sort of become a line next to this line. So they're kind of their own thing. They're not going away. We're going to keep them in the market. We're still manufacturing them. We don't have plans on stopping manufacturing of them. So say we start adding a bunch of effects to this. If those effects happen to be able to fit in Helix, which they likely will, you'll see those in updates probably. We still want to do quality of life improvements. Agoura Amps unfortunately won't work in Helix products. But smaller quality life things, like the big things like the focus view, there's no touchscreen, so it obviously can't do that. Unfortunately, it won't be able to run proxy stuff. But we have our own plans for that stuff as well. So,
So there's still some surprises in store for Helix.
Absolutely.
Oh, well, I know you're really busy. I think this is the last interview of the day.
Last interview.
Holy crow. So let's get ourselves a beer. Thanks so much.
Oh, wait.
You got one right there. Look at this.
Yeah.
So that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. And I guess I'll see you soon. Take care. Goodbye. Thank you so
Thanks,
much,
Jay.
buddy.
Appreciate it.
Awesome.
Yep.
All right. Take care.
Bye.